The case against the student loan forgiveness heads to the Supreme Court, so we'll be talking about all things student loan forgiveness, including what the grievance is, how the states plan to demonstrate how they are harmed by this, and what this could mean, especially with the propaganda that's coming out of this as well. So we'll be talking about that and where this goes from here and what I think that this actually is going forward. In other news, James Comer comes out and says that he believes that the Treasury Department is deliberately obstructing any investigation into the Biden finances. Is there going to be anything there? We will find out as we look into what's happening with that. Mike Pence shows his true colors as a warmonger, saying that we need to turn and give our all in to the Ukraine and make sure that we never stop, and anybody who disagrees with him is a Putin apologist. And Joe Manchin will not answer when asked if he's still a Democrat. It is going to be all this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and this is your evening news. We have got a ton of stuff to go over here today, partially because we have leftovers from last Friday, but we will power through. We will see what it is that we can get through here today over on Contemporary. A couple things to announce as we are going along here. Tonight will be the last time, the very final time, that we do Rules of Acquisition. And we will do a bonus Rules of Acquisition on Friday, because on Monday we will be going over both the live chat this coming Monday, both the live chat that is happening live on Monday night, plus we will be going over the names of everybody who chatted this past week. We're shifting our live chat read until to Monday now instead of on Friday, because again, Friday it's fish fry night, it's date night, it's the night where people are going out and doing things. And I don't think it's fair to try to give a reward to people for being here on a night when they should be out with family. I think that Friday should be our kind of slough off night, or kind of just have a little bit of fun night. Now, do keep in mind that I am reading a little bit more of the live chat now that I don't have to run. Like, really, realistically, all that I have to do is try to get done in time for the Porch Boys, but they're not even on anymore. So all I have to do is get done in time to go and have dinner anymore. So I'm not running out the door. So yes, we are going to be shifting our live chat night, so keep that in, and we'll be looking at some of the live chat, especially a little bit more this week, because we're not going to have a dedicated live chat night this week like we usually do. So prepare to come back in and do some of that on Monday. Also, although possibly not every weekend, video game streams are coming back. I had to go out and help my dad this weekend, so there was no game stream this weekend. But they're coming back. They're coming back this coming weekend. We're going to finish The Legend of Zelda because, well, I'm going to be completely frank with you guys. I want to see the end of that, and I want to go play Black Flag. I've been thinking about this, and I've been alternating between games that I've played and games that I've never played before. We did Fallout 3, and then we did Mass Effect, and then we're doing Legend of Zelda, and now I'm going to go back and play Assassin's Creed Black Flag for you guys. So I'm definitely looking forward to that and trying something new and something we've never seen for the first time, and actually having some time to just sit down and cut loose, I've been doing the live chat video game streams, and by the way, there are going to be occasional live chat video game streams too, where we'll come in and sit down and talk about what's going on. And I've been playing New Vegas again, and I'm actually playing as an NCR character this time, so I want to see the NCR ending. I really do. I don't want to dedicate an entire year into streaming to get to the NCR ending, but I do want to see what the NCR ending looks like. So that's coming up here. New game streams coming up, and a whole lot more. Definitely some things changing and some things moving around here. We will probably be seeing a new studio within the next few months, so strap yourselves in for that. I'm going to see if I can make sure that I don't have to take off from streaming to do that, to move into the new studio. I'm going to see if I can set myself up for that, but in the meantime, we've got a lot to go over here today, and we are barreling down into midterm season. And by the way, part of the reason I know we're in midterm season right now is because they're going over the student loan thing again. They're getting ready to go back and try and vote by for the 2024 election cycle, and that is why they're going to sit down here, they're going to publicize this and try to demonize the Supreme Court, who is Trump appointed, to make sure that they don't get any more Trump Supreme Court justices. By the way, I know we got one Biden appointee because, well, we had to step down, but we're in a position right now where anything could happen, and I don't know that there's going to be necessarily a retirement, but most of the people in the Supreme Court are not spring chickens. And I do think one of the big panics that's going to come in the campaign for 2024 is, who do you want to nominate your Supreme Court justice? And I really think that there's going to be a vacancy between then and now. So we will continue to watch and see what is happening with that. But we're going to get down into the main news of the day, starting with the finance. So let's get into it. Let's get started, and let's see what we have here. Looking at the Dow, which spiked itself up at the beginning of the day, and all of our investors were thinking, hey, it's over, it's won, we've won, now we can go back and make money again, and it petered out. At one point it actually dipped. I can't tell if that's to the previous close or just below, but it dipped down to at least the line of where it previously closed before bouncing back to end the day 72.17 points up, or 0.25% at 32,889.09. We'll watch and see what's happening with that with our one finance article from IBD in just a moment. Looking at the Bitcoin, which is at 23,533.80. Over the past 24 hours, it has dropped $23 or 0.1%. Coming out to the 5-day to see what happened over the weekend, it does look like there was a bit of a steady climb before bringing itself back down to steady itself again. So there have been a couple big swings, but for the most part, everything stays steady, and slow and steady wins the race. So those of you who have some Bitcoin, after seeing the one dump off, are sitting yourselves pretty much in the same boat that you've been in, so that's what we see coming from that. The gas prices have still not moved, although the quick trip going into the isthmus has dropped down from 310 to 306. So it seems like we're having a slight steady decline here. Still no decline coming off this, but no news is good news on the gas prices front, unless we see a massive decline back to 98 cents again, like we saw in June of 2020. Will that happen? Probably not in our lifetimes, but we didn't think it was going to happen in 2020 either. So we're in a political situation where anything can happen. Let's grab one from IBD. We are going to talk the markets, we're going to talk layoffs, and then we are going to go talk about the student loan crisis. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures rise, Warren Buffett stock Occidental falls on earnings, missed Tesla investor day on deck from Scott Latonin. Dow futures were higher ahead of Tuesday's open after the Dow Industrial Average cut gains to 72 points on Monday. Warren Buffett's stock Occidental Petroleum reported earnings after the close on Monday, while Tesla is set to hold its investor day on Wednesday, with CEO Elon Musk teasing a big reveal of Master Plan 3 details. Occidental Petroleum missed its Q4 earnings targets late Monday, sparking a 2% fall in extended trade. The Warren Buffett-backed energy giant reported earnings falling 9% to $161 a share in Q4, while revenue increased 4% to $8.22 billion. On the year, EPS ballooned 267% to $9.35, while sales shot up 43% to $37.1 billion. Occidental also upped its dividend and announced a $3 billion stock repurchase plan. Billionaire investor Buffett has been on Occidental Petroleum stock buying spree lately, with his Berkshire Hathaway adding more than 20 million Occidental shares to his portfolio since July 2022. Berkshire Hathaway has raised its stake in Occidental to 21.4% of the company, according to FactSet. Elsewhere on the earnings front, Workday dropped more than 2% after reporting quarter 4 results, while Zoom Video jumped 6% in the after-hours trade. Other notable companies reporting earnings this week are C3.ai, Costco Wholesale, Dollar Tree, Kohl's, Lowe's, Macy's, Ross Stores, and Salesforce. So a lot of things that are on the retail side, and this may get rough, by the way. This is not official financial advice, but this might be the week to start looking and seeing what you can move around. Talk with your financial advisor, of course. All decisions should be made by somebody who knows your personal portfolio better than somebody who yells into a microphone. So this is not for legal purposes official financial advice. On the markets today, on Monday, the Dow rose 0.2% and the S&P gained 0.3%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ rallied 0.6% among the ETFs. The NASDAQ 100 tracker Invesco QQQ Trust moved up 0.7%, and the SPDR S&P 500 climbed 0.3%. EV giant Tesla traded up 5.5% on Monday. Among the Dow stocks, Apple rose 0.8% and Microsoft climbed 0.4% in today's market. IBD leaderboard watchlist stock Palo Alto, Deere, Toll Brothers, and Wingstop, as well as Dow Jones stocks American Express, Cisco Systems, and JP Morgan Chase are among the top stocks to watch amid the recent stock market weaknesses. Palo Alto is an IBD leaderboard watchlist stock. Deere was a recent IBD stock of the day pick. American Express and Toll Brothers were featured in this week's Stocks Nearby Zone column. On the futures, ahead of Tuesday's bell, Dow rose 0.15 versus fair value, the S&P rose 0.1, and the NASDAQ was up 0.2 versus fair value. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. The 10-year yield fell on Monday, settling at 3.92%, which again comes to a point where they want revenue so badly, and they want to try not to tax it and get you to buy bonds in instead. But, and again, not official financial advice, I would stay away from bonds at this point. With a debt crisis looming, and by the way, we haven't talked about that for a while, but with a debt crisis looming, guess who's going to get hurt? That goes directly against the bondholders. So, pay attention to that. We will see what's happening there. Oil prices dropped less than 1% Monday, pausing after a 2-session rally. West Texas Intermediate futures traded just below $76 a barrel. So that is where we are at for that. Let's look at layoffs. Ars Technica, Twitter payments chief, is out as layoffs cut 10% of Twitter staff, report says. Twitter now has fewer than 2,000 employees, the New York Times, a former newspaper, reported. From Ashley Bellinger. More engineers, product managers, and data scientists are out at Twitter as another round of layoffs has slashed 10% of the remaining staff, the New York Times, a former newspaper, reported. Multiple sources familiar with the matter told the Times that 200 employees were affected. On Saturday night, just as it's happening during Twitter's November layoffs, some employees discovered that they were about to lose their jobs when they were abruptly logged out of corporate email accounts and laptops. Now, there are fewer than 2,000 employees left, it's estimated. Among those impacted is Esther Crawford, who enthusiastically embraced Twitter CEO Elon Musk's vision of Twitter 2.0 and proved to be so hardcore that she became the chief executive of Twitter Payments, Financial Times reported. In November, Musk told staff that there were no plans for more layoffs and pointed to Twitter Payments, a product that would support peer-to-peer payments and e-commerce on the platform, as a product that would save Twitter from going broke. Now the Twitter Payments team has dropped from a staff of 30 to fewer than 8, the Times reported, making it unclear if the product still has a top priority as Twitter's money struggles drag on. I'm going to go on a limb and say probably not. I mean, if you've got 8 employees, I don't see this going forward. Ours cannot immediately reach Twitter or Crawford for comment. So, even the most dedicated at Twitter are out at this point because, well, the sector, as I've said before, overhired, I think is one of the best ways to look at what happened here. So, learn to, that word I can't say on YouTube, so I have to say it in some sort of code. Maybe it wasn't the best plan after all. Alright, let's talk about our main news of the day. First thing, before we get started, I do want to give an update. Again, I don't want the man to die in office. I want him to live a long, healthy, and happy life. I want him to get his butt voted out of there. I definitely do. But I don't want him to die in office. I don't want to see any harm befall him. And again, depression and suicide prevention, it's a big thing to me. So if you're going to be here, we're going to hear about some of this here. So reading from WGAL8. Pennsylvania U.S. Senator John Fetterman remains on a path to recovery. No author. Should we listen to the video? It's 30 seconds. Let's do that instead.
John Fetterman's office just released an update on the senator's health nearly 2 weeks after he checked himself into a hospital for clinical depression. His communications director says that the senator is doing well, working with the wonderful doctors, and remains on a path to recovery. He is visiting with staff and family daily, and his staff is keeping him up to date on Senate business and news. And this comes as News8 has been asking for updates on his health. His stay at the Walter Reed Medical Center is being called a weeks-long process.
All right, so that's all they have to say here. The full statement, Monday's entire statement, is posted below. Let's read. We don't have a lot to update folks with since there's no real news to report except that John is doing well, working with the wonderful doctors, and remains on a path to recovery. He is visiting with staff and family daily, and his staff are keeping him updated on Senate business and news. Our team is moving full speed ahead and working tirelessly for the people of Pennsylvania. Really? Because if he's in the hospital, he can't go and give the guaranteed yes vote, which I'm told is literally the only reason that he's in the Senate right now. I'm going to need a fact check on that one. Just last week, we opened a new office in Erie, and we'll be opening several more offices in the coming weeks. We understand the intense interest in John's status and especially appreciate the flood of well wishes. However, as we have said, this will be a weeks-long process. While we will be sure to keep folks updated as it progresses, this is all there's going to give by way of an update. And if I was a person of Pennsylvania, I would be pretty pissed right now. I'm not going to lie. If Ron Johnson or Tammy Baldwin were doing something like this, I would be calling Madison and saying, hey, what the hell? This person assured me that he or she would be there to represent me. In Tammy's case, not so much. Well, in Ron's case, not so much either. I'm not going to lie. By the way, prediction right up here up front, sidebar of course, but prediction up front. Within the next election cycle, Ron Helton will never be a warmonger. Ron Johnson will become a massive warmonger in the Senate again, depending, of course, on who the standard bearer is. Calling that one now. But if I was a person of Pennsylvania, I'd be pretty mad. This person assured me that he was mentally fit and capable to go back and do that job, sit there, and be a rubber stamp yes vote for any Democrat legislation that comes past his desk. For 6 years. And he didn't even make it 6 weeks. So, hey, we got an issue here. So, that is what we're doing. Again, I don't want to see any harm befall John Fetterman. I want to see him voted out of office. I want to see his people come to him with pitchforks and say, hey, you better not run again, Lurch. But I want to see him live a long and healthy and happy life. Alright, let's talk student loans. Starting with ABC Action News 6 out of Philadelphia. Biden's student loan forgiveness plan goes before Supreme Court on Tuesday, tomorrow. What borrowers need to know, and we've got several articles about this. Like, we're legitimately... How far up are we going? I guess I don't have as much as I thought I did. So yeah, we're going up to this CNN article just on the student loan stuff. So some of this is going to be a repeat, and we'll skip over. I mean, you've been here before, most of you. You know what's going on here. Let's see, from Kate Labosco. Millions of student loan borrowers could see up to 20 grand of their debt canceled depending on the outcome of Tuesday's U.S. Supreme Court hearing on Biden's student loan forgiveness program. How and when the justices rule will also determine when payments on federal student loans will resume after a pandemic-related pause that has been in place for nearly 3 years. By the way, if this gets overturned, these payments do not start again until after the next Republican is president. Just a reminder of that. But this is a vote by. The Biden admin has said that payments will resume 60 days after litigation over the forgiveness program, Am I reading this wrong, or did they miss a word in here? Let me look over this again. The Biden admin has said that payments will resume 60 days after litigation over the forgiveness program is resolved. Okay. Yes, I am reading it like a moron. I'm reading it like a Biden. Is resolved or at the end of August, whichever comes first. Want to bet? Biden announced the targeted student loan forgiveness program last August, but the implementation was put on hold by lower courts before any debt forgiveness was granted. The justices will argue in 2 cases Tuesday concerning the program, which is estimated to cost $400 billion. One case was brought by 6 Republican-led states that said they would be harmed financially if the forgiveness program goes into effect. The other case was brought by 2 borrowers in Texas who don't fully qualify for the debt forgiveness under the program. Plaintiffs in both lawsuits argue the admin does not have the authority to cancel student loan debt under the proposed rule of the program, but the Biden admin argues that a 03 law grants the executive branch the power to discharge federal student loan debt in the event of a national emergency, including the pinko-pox pandemic. There are about 43 million borrowers with federal student loan debt. Student loans. Here is what they need to know, and we will be talking about that just a bit later. But some of this we know already, like who will qualify, or when will borrowers know? The end of the current term is when the Supreme Court will release its ruling, which is usually late June, early July. Who is eligible? We know that. $250,000 annually. For households, $125,000 individually, or so $1/8 individually, for $10 grand plus the Pell Grant will give you another 10. What happens if it's struck down? Your payments will continue. I'm not even going to read what they're saying here. We'll look at it in just a second, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen if it's struck down. The pause will continue until such time that a new Republican administration is seated. So they will continue to find reason to put another pause and stop it temporarily, over and over again. What are the legal arguments at play? We'll be talking about that more in depth later. So that is what's happening right now. I actually want to go into the BBC because, well, they don't have a ball in this ball game. So they're going to be, I think, a little bit more objective, although probably still leaning more towards Biden because it's England and we make sure that everybody can go to the best colleges for free. Free being operative, of course, because the taxpayers pay for it. From the BBC, Student Loan Forgiveness, the Supreme Court Challenges Explained. From Madeline Halpert for BBC News of New York. This week marks another critical moment for President Biden's one-time student loan forgiveness plan. The Supreme Court is reconvening to hear 2 cases related to the program, which could determine whether more than 40 million people in the U.S. are able to have thousands of dollars of debt canceled. Mr. Biden announced a plan last August to cancel up to $10,000 or 8,400 pounds. I don't know why the pound is suddenly so much more valuable than the US dollar, but in federal student loans for Americans who earn less than eighth of $1,000,000 each year. But applications for the program were halted after a lower court judge ruled last November that it was unlawful. On Tuesday, the 6-3 conservative majority Supreme Court will begin to hear arguments about 2 lawsuits challenging the plan and could issue a ruling that would effectively strike down or uphold the program this summer. Some legal experts told the BBC that the cases, as well as future potential legal challenges, spell trouble for one of Mr. Biden's 2020 presidential campaign pledges. It's doomed, Jed Sugarman, a professor at Fordham Law School, told the BBC. By choosing an obviously flawed path that was always likely to get struck down by the court, the Biden admin has run out of time in these 4 years to get anything like this through. We're going to come back to that. That is an interesting point. I didn't pre-read this, so I didn't know that that point was there, but that is an interesting point. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. What's at stake? More than 25 million people applied to the Biden admin's loan forgiveness plan before applications were halted. The plan was expected to forgive an estimated $430 billion of debt in total, and would allow almost 20 million borrowers to have their entire student loan balances canceled, according to the White House. It also provides up to $20,000 in debt forgiveness for students on Pell Grants, which applies to those in the greatest financial need. Is Biden's debt forgiveness fair? Mr. Biden's plan has drawn criticism from Republicans who've argued that the admin overstepped his authority in using executive power related to national emergencies to push the program through. Biden officials have argued a federal law known as the HEROES Act of '03 authorizes the administration to forgive student loans in the wake of the pinkopox pandemic. The law was enacted after the September 11th attacks and allows for loan cancellation for people who have suffered economic hardship because of a national emergency. While several legal challenges to the plan have been dismissed, 2 federal courts have sided with the challengers, leading the Biden admin to appeal to the Supreme Court to make a ruling on the program's legality. The Supreme Court will begin to hear 2 consolidated cases on Tuesday: Department of Education versus Brown and Biden versus Nebraska. The first case involves 2 student loan borrowers who argue that the admin unfairly excluded some, including those who have commercially held loans, from debt cancellation, so that it did so without allowing for a period of public comment, which is also a fair point. We're going to put a pin into that, and we're going to come back to that as we discuss this. The latter concerns a legal challenge from 6 Republican-led states: Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, and South Carolina, that argued the Department of Education did not have the authority to cancel student debt, and that Biden admin used the pinkopox pandemic as a pretext to enact a broader policy goal. Both cases hinge on whether challengers to the loan forgiveness plan can demonstrate that they would be harmed by the program. If so, they would have the standing to challenge the legal right to sue, effectively sending the Biden admin back to attempt modifications to the policy before it could be implemented. Standing is a sort of jurisdictional requirement before the case can even get heard, making sure that there's a real person whose interests are really affected by the challenged government's action, said Thomas Bennett, an associate professor of law at the University of Missouri. To bring a case in federal court, he said, a plaintiff must be able to demonstrate that they would suffer from concrete harm or injury because of the policy. Experts say the strongest case comes from the state of Missouri, which argues that its loan servicer, the Missouri Higher Education Loan Authority, will suffer financially because it will no longer receive millions of dollars in fees for loans forgiven by the program. Missouri's claim is much more direct in that you can see the pocketbook injury simply from the fact that Mohila will have fewer loans in its portfolio, Mr. Bennett said. All right, let's talk about this, because there are a few things that are moving in this. There are a few moving pieces, and in all honesty, I don't know necessarily that one of these cases will go through, but I actually think the other one might. I had my doubts on both of these cases. But I want to talk about what Judge Sugarman said for just a moment. It's doomed, Judge Sugarman, a professor at Fordham Law, told the BBC, by choosing an obviously flawed path that was always likely to get struck down by the court. The Biden admin has run out of time in these 4 years to get anything like this through. And coming on and juxtaposing this with, let's see, this one down here. The admin unfairly excluded some, including those who have commercially held loans, from debt cancellation, and that it did so without allowing for a period of public comment. All right, so let's talk about this. Now, number one, it's always been legally dubious. The Democrats and the progressives, like Nina Turner, will tell you breathlessly that the Biden admin has the unequivocal power to just do this and sign the piece of paper and it's gone. But realistically, nobody knows if that's actually true. One of the nice things that's going to come out about this case is that we will unequivocally know. I tend to lean towards the fact that the presidency doesn't have that kind of power, but I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know. So I'm going to let 9 legal scholars who have studied the law for their entire careers be the ones who determine something like that, and who are tasked specifically with determining the constitutionality of laws that are passed by Congress. I don't think the Biden admin does. I would think that that would, number one, require an act of Congress, because you can't just make money disappear. And the House of Representatives holds the purse strings. Like it or not, that money is going to come from somewhere. As much as our progressive friends try to tell us that this money is just, like, if he cancels it, this money is just going to disappear, it's not. Because there is domestic investment, foreign investment, and business investment that are all three tied to this money. This money exists. And it is going to come from somewhere. It's not just going to disappear. Now, with that being said, there is the fact, and by the way, this does affect me. When they talk about commercially held loans and not allowing for a period of public comment. The loans, the little bit of loan that I have with the University of Wisconsin is applicable to this. It's publicly held. What I have for the mechanic school that I went to, that I will not name, is private. A lot of people who went to private schools like Carthage or Viterbo or Marquette or things like that have private loans. I went, had a 2-year on again, off again relationship with a girl who's a teacher at a Lutheran school in Milwaukee. At least she was the last time I saw her. I have no idea what the hell she's doing now, and that's been well over 10 years. But at the time, teacher at a Lutheran school in Milwaukee, whose loan servicer was the same as mine. She went to, well, I'm not naming her, so I can actually say she went to Concordia. Commercially held loans, not private. None of our loans like that are eligible for any of this. I know, because when I thought that my loans for the mechanic school were eligible, I started getting phone calls from the servicer. I would, honestly, I think that knocks at least half, if not 3/4 of the student debt borrowers out. I would have to see a statistic, but I mean, I know that there are a lot of people that go to private school on a loan. I was engaged to one of them. So there's that aspect to everything. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, hey, we were promised this, and we were harmed by it. By the way, if this did will go through and it took out because I got a Pell Grant, if this lumped in and took the commercially held ones too, this would clear me. And I don't want to be cleared, obviously. I took the loan, but I fall under the $20,000 mark. I don't know that this case goes anywhere, but it's an interesting thought exercise to see if it does, especially with, what was the guy's name? Sugarman? With Sugarman pointing out, one of the things that really, it caught my attention when they started doing this, was I do think that this was designed to fail. In fact, I would almost be going out on a limb and saying that I think Biden is hoping that this collapses, because there is 0% chance that even a Democrat Congress would sign off on a spending plan of this magnitude that frees a younger generation. One of the things with student loans is that it basically guarantees workers, a generation of workers who are too afraid to go out and not have a job, to be on student loans. But in order for it to fail, it would also have to come back down to, oh, look at what these evil Trump appointees did, these evil Republicans did. So they don't have to shell out the dollars and push to the inflation, and they still get to say, Orange Man bad. As far as the state case goes, the one that involves the state of Missouri especially, Missouri has the most tangible the harm to be done, to be brought forward. It's dubious. And it would be really, really hard for public opinion to come back out and say, well, we're worried about what's happening to evil student loan servicer. You know what they're going to say. You know full well what they're going to say. But realistically, that does, and again, when I say that there are dollar bills attached to this, there are probably millions of dollars of investment tied up into the servicer, because it was a guaranteed industry at the time. In Missouri pension plans, in Missouri business investment, and retirement portfolios, both public and private. So without this coming in, this does stand to throw a lot of other people in turmoil, especially people who have stock into this company. So, I mean, this is not just as much of a flick of the pen and this all goes away, like people like Nina Turner believe that it is. There are real outcomes to this, and there are real problems to this. But that is where they are at. Let's grab one from USA Today, trying to give Democrat voters a positive side. Millions of borrowers have had billions of student loan debt erased, and there's more to come. Here's how. President Brandon's student loan debt relief plan is teetering on the edge of a Supreme Court cliff, which basically the USA Today is coming out and saying this is gone, which again partially tells me that this was intended to fail. Other avenues for forgiving or winnowing student loan borrowers' debt, however, are alive and well. There's even a plan in the works to keep people from borrowing to attend a subpar school. Should have been doing that in the first place. And make a decision on the bad degrees while you're at it. The admin has streamlined loan forgiveness for people who work in the public sector, canceled the debts of students taken advantage of by predatory colleges and universities, except for me, and unveiled a new income-driven repayment plan that could reduce how much borrowers have to pay. Together, these programs affect millions of borrowers, have led to billions in student loan debt being forgiven, and could erase billions more. Most are meant to be long-term changes rather than a one-time fix. Whether the court undoes Biden's signature plan or not, other programs are essential to addressing the nation's student loan debt in the long run. One-time debt relief would wipe out a chunk of the country's $1.7 trillion student loan debt portfolio, but it could quickly rebound if widespread borrowing continues unabated. Changing how student loan payments work, a proposal from the White House expected to take effect next year, would address student loan payments, interest on payments, and other aspects of how repaying loans work for people using a so-called income-driven repayment plan. Nearly all federal student loans are eligible for one of these plans. These changes include for undergraduate loans, cutting in half the amount borrowers have to pay each month from 10% to 5% of discretionary income. Raise the amount of income considered non-discretionary, which means it's protected from being factored into how much people have to repay, guaranteeing that borrowers earning under 225% of their federal poverty level, that's about what a person making $15 an hour makes in a year, will not have to make normal monthly payments. Forgive loan balances after 10 years of payments instead of 20 for borrowers whose original loan balance was 12 grand or less. The Federal Education Department predicts that this change means nearly all community college borrowers will be debt-free within 10 years. Cover borrowers' unpaid monthly interest, so no borrower's loans balance will grow as long as they make their monthly payments, even when that monthly payment is zero because their income is low. So, and we know about the public sector workers. That's been a thing from the beginning. Disability, debt forgiveness when college collapses or misleads, and a bigger Pell Grant, of course. But here's an interesting one: discharging student loan debt through bankruptcy, which was something that I brought up from the beginning, and actually would probably be one of the quickest ways to fix the system. Shedding debt by declaring bankruptcy used to be nearly impossible, but that's changing in November. The Education Department and Department of Justice made it easier for those with student debt to discharge their obligations via bankruptcy. The USA Today puts this in a little blurb towards the bottom where nobody else can see it. But this is probably one of the most important aspects of addressing student loan debt. Because number one, you're about to make a whole lot of lawyers very, very rich. But number two, and this is the bigger one of the two, now that there is an inherent risk. Now, keep in mind one thing. These loans were federally guaranteed, which means that the servicers can just sit on them, but could never be discharged in bankruptcy either. That was a recent change, and I believe that changed in the Obama admin, if I remember correctly. But they couldn't be discharged in bankruptcy, which meant that you sat on them, and there was no risk to the servicer. They could just sit there and call and harp and call and harp and call and harp, and they could destroy every aspect of your life and call and harp and call and harp and call and harp, and there was nothing that could be done about it. You had that. No matter if you lost your house, if you lost your job, if you lost your car, if you were living down in a van by the river, you had that forever. So when you went in and said, "Hey, I'm bankrupt. I have nothing. Can't you give anything?" The student loan servicer could laugh at you and say, "No, pay up." If you can discharge us in bankruptcy, again, this is something that I would never do, but have morals and principles. This is America in current year. I'm a rarity among people my age. I took the money, no matter how worthless the degree was. I took the money and I intend to pay it. This is a rarity among people my age, which means that at some point, this is all going to go away. Because as more and more people try to jump onto this, more and more of these companies are going to look at this and say, "Hey, we got to get something back out of here. Let's make a deal. I want to do everything I can to keep you out of that bankruptcy court, because then I get jack crap. So come on, let's sit down. Let's make a deal. Let's figure out what's going to work best for you and for me." Which I think would actually put a lot of people on a lot better footing. Maybe even some of the progressives who might change their mind about paying it all back. Alright, I'm gonna skip over the Axios one. Let's talk just a bit about this one from ABC, but this is going a little bit more in depth into the Missouri servicer. Supreme Court case against Biden student debt relief could hinge on Missouri. From Devin Dwyer, Ann Flaherty, and Sarah Herndon. Critics of Biden admin's plan to cancel federal student loan debt for more than 40 million Americans say it's expensive, unfair, and abuse of executive power. But when a group of 6 GOP-led states on Tuesday challenges the program before the U.S. Supreme Court, they'll have to first answer the critical question of how exactly they are harmed. You can't just go to the court and say, I don't like this, or I think that this might be a problem, said David Namias, a staff attorney for the Berkeley Center for Consumer Law and Economic Justice. In order to sue, you have to show that you're going to be threatened with certain impending injury. The states have alleged a future financial injury from lost revenue on student loan discharges, fewer loans on the books. They say it would mean fewer taxes to collect. The state of Missouri argues, well, taxation is theft, so you don't get much sympathy from me for that. The state of Missouri argues that it would be uniquely harmed by the impact of large-scale debt cancellation on Missouri's Higher Education Loan Authority, or MOHELA, which is the nation's largest loan servicer. The Biden admin says the state's claims are highly speculative and indirect, undermining their legal standing to bring the case in the first place. The basic threshold issue is Missouri, is Nebraska, are the states injured today, said South Texas College of Law professor Josh Blackman. Lower courts and legal scholars from across the ideological spectrum have divided on the question of injury, setting the stage for the justices to have the final say on whether the Biden debt relief plan inflicts clear harm on state governments. The answer is tricky because in recent years, the states have been given latitude, said Blackman. This might be a case of the court scaling back on that broad authority, although I'm not sure. The Department of Education last year, citing the need to protect borrowers from excessive economic hardship during the pandemic, invoked emergency powers to waive repayment terms for some federal student loans. The agency offered to absolve as much as $20,000 of federal debt for more than 40 million eligible borrowers. The move drew an immediate legal challenge from Republican attorneys general in 6 states, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina, who saw it as a costly bailout to college students at the expense of other American taxpayers, which it will be, by the way. Joe Biden has no legal authority whatsoever. I think the largest issue is it's unfair to people who've paid off their loans. It's unfair to people who didn't take out loans, said Eric Schmidt, Missouri's Republican former attorney general, who first brought the case, told ABC News in an interview. It's adding to our debt, Schmidt added. I think the reason why this case is before the Supreme Court and why Missouri and other states are ultimately going to win is because Missouri has a loan servicing organization called MOHELA that derives revenue from interest. So, I'm actually curious as to how this turns out. This one specifically. Because this is the one that has the most concrete evidence. In the most immediacy. So, we will continue to watch this and see what happens with that. I am going to have to skip this one because this is Insider and I didn't archive it, although it doesn't seem to be kicking over. So we'll just go with it. A federal judge just ruled $6 billion in student debt cancellation can move forward for about 200,000 defrauded borrowers, saying the decision will allow them to not only move on, but also move up, elevating others in the process. Writes Eilert Sheffy. Thousands of student loan borrowers are finally moving forward with long-awaited debt relief. On Friday, federal judge William Alsup ruled that a settlement that had already been approved last year resulting from a lawsuit, Sweet v. Cardona, can move forward, which would give 200,000 borrowers defrauded by schools they attended $6 billion in relief. This relief has been a long time coming. The lawsuit was first filed in 2019 when the plaintiffs accused former President Trump's Education Department of failing to process their borrowers' defense claims, which are claims borrowers can file if they believe they were defrauded by their schools. Since the lawsuit wasn't resolved under Trump, President Biden took it on and agreed to a settlement to give borrowers relief. However, two for-profit companies, Lincoln Educational Services and American National University, and Everglades College, a nonprofit, filed notices to appeal ALSUP's decision in January and paused the relief because they argued they did not have sufficient time to push back against being included in the settlement. ALSUP rejected their request on Friday. The settlement breaks a logjam that has vexed several secretaries and allows the department to redirect resources to other initiatives and gives plaintiffs, who have languished in borrower defense applications limbo, their long-awaited relief, ALSUP wrote in his decision. Note, the relief provided by the settlement, financial and otherwise, will allow plaintiffs to breathe easier, sleep easier, repair their credit scores, take new jobs, enroll in new educational programs, finish their degrees, get married, start families, provide for their children, finance houses and vehicles, and save for retirement, he continued. It will allow them not only to move on, but also to move up, elevating others in the process. So this will be another lengthy one, and again, I don't know who all is affected by this. I don't believe I am. For people who had a problem with a for-profit school, which is like the one that I attended. And the last one that we will do on this, we're not going to spend a lot of time here because we have spent almost the entire program talking about student debt relief, with an array of other things to go over, and rules of acquisition. Of course, we have to look at the CNN editorialization, which is an analysis by Devon Cole. It's an op-ed. College debt relief program rests in the hands of 9 wealthy and elite people. Op-ed by Devon Cole. The fate of President Biden's student loan forgiveness program that would impact the scores of borrowers from a wide array of colleges and socioeconomic backgrounds lies in the hands of 9 relatively wealthy people who graduated from a short list of elite private schools. When the Biden admin goes before the Supreme Court Tuesday to defend the program, which would offer up $20,000 of federal student debt forgiveness to millions of qualified borrowers, they'll be making their arguments to a small group of jurists who are far from being representative of the borrowers that could benefit from the relief. Which is hilarious to me, and that's, all the farther I'm going to go into this. This is all hilarious to me because we don't make federal law based on the income of the people who are being affected. And we don't make extra constitutional decisions because of this. What Devon Cole might as well say when he's writing this article is, we should just suspend and throw out the Constitution. Because poor people. It doesn't matter if this is constitutional. We should just allow our president to be a king and a dictator because poor people. Are you kidding me right now? And they're not either, by the way. They know full well what they're doing. This is the stupidest argument that I have seen in a long time. And yet they're going to keep taking it as the bank. Thank you, Arvold. I think you should stay for the whole thing, Arvold. Ron Helton telling us how he really feels. No, I think he's holding back a little bit on this one. All right, that's student loan forgiveness. We will hear probably more tomorrow. This will actually most likely, unless we have something big happen in Ukraine, be front and center news. And by the way, I do anticipate that something big happens in Ukraine if this doesn't go the president's way, but we will see what's happening with that. Let's move on here. Okay, yeah, we'll do a little bit of this one here. We'll do a little bit of train derailment, and then we will go into government officials behaving badly, and I got a lot of those. I got a bunch of those. That is my favorite segment now, government officials behaving badly. But let's talk just a bit about this first. From NBC News, House Republicans seek Treasury testimony in Hunter Biden probe. From Sarah Fitzpatrick. The Republican-led House Oversight Committee has asked a Treasury Department official to testify in its investigation into the Biden family finances, according to a letter sent Friday obtained by NBC News. It's the most significant escalation in a long-running and thus far unsuccessful effort by the GOP-led committee to obtain access to the alleged suspicious activity reports related to Hunter Biden and the Biden family that Republicans have said are a key part to their investigation into Biden family business practices. Suspicious activity reports, or SARs, are required by federal law, and financial institutions must file them when they detect unusual transactions that could be signs of illegal activity. Jim Comer of Kentucky has asked Isabella Moore, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Oversight in the Treasury Department, to testify at a March 10th hearing suggesting that the department has deliberately delayed the production of documents to his committee in order to hinder its investigation. This hearing will examine the various justifications you have provided the committee regarding the Treasury's failure to produce documents requested of it, including SARs, Comer wrote. I'm willing to bet that they're having a hard time getting these documents is because they don't exist. Comer in his letter suggests that the relevant SARs have already been produced to others. I may stand corrected. The hearing will provide the committee invaluable information regarding the Treasury's approach to congressional oversight, as the committee considers legislation that codifies what was once regular congressional access to SARs, Comer wrote. The Treasury Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. It is not clear whether or not there are relevant SARs. So maybe I'm not completely standing corrected just yet, but I'd be willing to bet that there aren't. And I'd be willing to bet that Yellen's Treasury has not been keeping what they're supposed to be keeping. From the Daily Wire, a brief aside onto this, bad faith. Treasury Department obstructing investigation into Biden's family finances, House Republican says. From Tim Pierce. House Oversight Committee, James Comer, accused the Biden admin of operating in bad faith and obstructing his committee's investigation into the Biden's family finances. No way! No way! Welcome, Mr. Scott. Oh, I know you'll have more than one comment. Comer said in a letter to the Treasury Department revealed on Monday that the department has been suspiciously slow to respond to the committee request for suspicious activity reports filed over deals members of President Biden's family made with foreign businessmen. During the committee's dialogue with the Treasury, you have made several excuses for the Treasury's delay regarding the production, Comer wrote. Given the amount of time that has passed since our initial request and the Treasury's inability to provide a projected time frame when the SARs will be produced, rather, the committee believes the Treasury may be delaying its production to hinder our investigation and operating in bad faith. Well, they're operating in faith, whether or not it's good or bad. We'll see, but again, I don't think that these reports exist. Whether it is to protect Biden, which is the most likely, or because they just didn't do them, which is less likely. That's going to be my anticipation, it's just that they don't exist. Plain and simple. And we will say goodbye to our Instagram audience tonight. Thank you for coming by. And if you're seeing this after the fact, hit the link in the description below and you can see the video, the articles, and hear the music. And we will see you here next time. Take care. Alright, the Instagrammers are gone. We can talk about them. Last week, Isabella Moore, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Oversight at the Treasury, told congressional investigators that the department must still meet with law enforcement partners because of the sensitivity of the documents requested by the committee. This entire process takes considerable time to complete, Moore said, according to Comer's letter. Treasury's excused and delayed tactics are unavailing, given that you have known about our requests since last year and previously produced relevant suspicious activity reports to others, Comer wrote. Yeah, the next time we watch a video, I'll go ahead and get that set back up. The committee chairman said Moore could better explain herself in a meeting before the committee, and he invited the Treasury official to testify before the committee on March 10th. Will she do it? I guess we'll know in 11 days, won't we? Let's see, what else do we have here? Jim Comer says Treasury blocking 150 Biden family banking reports. That's just a tangible number. We'll skip this one. But we'll also talk about oversight on the border. From Axios, House Oversight widens border investigation demands. From Steph W. Kite. House Oversight Chairman Jim Comer wants to hear from every Chief Patrol agent overseeing parts of the U.S.-Mexico border, according to a new letter provided by Axios. House Republicans show no signs of slowing down on their investigation of Biden's border policy, and Homeland Security has hired counsel to prepare for potential impeachment inquiries. Probably not a bad idea. The committee heard from 2 sector chiefs in its first border hearing in early February. Now, Comer is asking for transcribed interviews with the remaining 7 chiefs overseeing sections of the land border between U.S. and Mexico. The uniqueness of each sector demonstrates the need for a committee to obtain additional information regarding other sectors on the southern border, Comer writes in a letter sent on Sunday. Comer plans to conduct interviews at the border to accommodate the Chief Patrol agents' schedules and minimize impact to agency operations. The request comes shortly after a series of congressional visits to the border, including by Kevin McCarthy, and its Republicans make clear they have no intention of moving on from the topic. So, will it go anywhere? Well, I guess I'm not sure. I don't think so. Let's talk about Ohio. Let's see, we got 4 for Ohio, and then we get to my favorite part of the day, which now on Mondays, as I mentioned at the top of the show, will be my second favorite part of the day, because my favorite part of the day is always when I get to read the live chat, full from the beginning to the end. For those of you who were not here at the beginning of the program, reminder, this will be the last time we do Ferengi Rules of Acquisition on a Monday, because starting next Monday, and we will not be doing a live chat segment on this Friday. Starting on Monday, our live chat segment is at the end of the show on Monday, which means we will be going through and reading everything that everybody talked or said throughout the day, so long as, it won't get us kicked off YouTube, but also giving a thank you to everybody who chatted throughout the week before. Friday's a date night. Friday's a fish fry night. I don't want to punish people who otherwise support me here by not getting to read their live chats out here, so we're switching it to Monday, a work night. I think it's going to work out better for everybody. House Republicans will host multiple hearings on Ohio train disaster. Report. Is anybody shocked by this? I'm not shocked by this. House Republicans will host hearings about the train derailment and subsequent chemical fallout in East Palestine, including a possible field hearing so lawmakers can hear directly from the residents of this small town, according to a Sunday report from Axios. Officials previously executed a controlled burn of industrial chemicals on the vehicle to decrease the risk of an explosion. Vinyl chloride, a known human carcinogen used to manufacture PVC, was emitted from 5 train cars in the form of massive plumes of black smoke, visible throughout eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania. Bodies, such as the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the House Energy and Commerce Committee, are considering probes into the federal agencies charged with handling the incident. While we're at it, let's check into the NTSB and see if somebody was actually monitoring the hot boxes or not. That's what I'm interested in. More taxpayer dollars and bankrupting a company that's an essential part of our supply chain. That's just par for the course for our federal government. I want to see what the federal government did wrong. Probably never will, but House Oversight and Accountability Chair James Comer likewise sent a letter to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg last week, requesting the senior official's communications related to the incident. The infrastructure failure that caused the derailment has led to an environmental disaster, Comer and other lawmakers wrote. Yeah, I know. As a person who has a CDL, as a person who has worked around commercial vehicles for almost his entire career, and has worked directly with the NTSB, I know that to be true. But I still want to see what it is that they're hiding. I know you're right. I do. It's wishful thinking, maybe. I saw a meme once. It was back in my Apple days, so I know I don't have it on my phone now. But I think I have it on my external. I just have to know where my external went after I moved. But I have a meme of the DOT, or two guys standing at the urinals with their hands crossed and in each other's pants. And on the back of their shirts, one says DOT and the other says NTSB. And it's very apt. Trust me, I know. I've been working around them forever. Bill Johnson of Ohio, whose district includes East Palestine, is a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee and previously invited Buttigieg to a town hall with his constituents. "I'll see if a seat for you," he told the former Democratic presidential contender on social media. "It's past time you hear the concerns of the residents." And by the way, let's not forget about Mayor Pete, looking like the poster boy for OSHA, with his reflective jacket and his safety goggles, even though there were supposedly no chemicals around, and his hard hat and his $1,000 dress boots. He went down there in his suit, found the quickest bathroom to change and glory hole in, and oops, did I say that last part out loud? And then came out looking like the poster boy for the team. Authorities from the NTSB said in a preliminary report that a malfunctioning railcar axle was responsible for the disaster. Again, I know how wheel bearings work, and you knew about this long, like days before the derailment, if everything was being monitored properly. Governor DeWine said the vehicle was not considered a high hazardous material train, meaning the railroad was not required to notify anyone here in Ohio about what was in the rail cars traversing the state. So, and yeah, as was pointed out, when they talk about Donald Trump repealing the law that would require automatic brakes on high hazardous materials, that wouldn't have pertained to this train. Because only these handful of cars out of the entire 300-car train were subject to it, and it has to be a certain percentage of cars on the train. I thought it was 50 before. I don't think it's 50. I think it's like 10, but still. There weren't enough cars carrying this kind of material to warrant having this rule. From the BBC, a touch on that. East Palestine train derailment, toxic waste removal to restart in Ohio town. Yes, I didn't know that it stopped. So let's just look into this and see why it might have stopped. From Bernd de Busman Jr. Shipments of toxic waste from the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment are expected to resume after a brief pause, environmental officials had said. Solid and liquid waste from the site are now being shipped to specialized facilities. Over the weekend, officials said the air quality in the town is normal despite ongoing fears from residents. On February 25th, the U.S. EPA said it was ordering a temporary halt on shipments of contaminated waste from the site. An EPA regional admin, Deborah Shore, said the stopping of the shipments would allow officials to ensure that all the waste is disposed of in safe and lawful manner. Okay, so basically it was just a catch-up, period. And now they are going back to transporting again. So that's what we saw there. They're back to it. It's mostly what I wanted to know from this one. From WKBN 27 CBS out of Youngstown, East Palestine residents experiencing unusual symptoms, chemical bronchitis. No way! Oh, you were all there? When the train car derailed, started putting fumes into the air. You evacuated and you came out after they burned a known carcinogen into the air, without any real indication that it had all been cleared out yet. I wonder how that happened. As the cleanup continues from the February 3rd train derailment, local healthcare workers are seeing more and more people from the East Palestine area complaining that they don't feel well. Workers with the QuickMed Urgent Care in Columbiana told First News that they're seeing patients sharing similar symptoms, including a burning sensation when they breathe, as well as rashes and general weakness. Maybe it wasn't quite time to sound that all clear just yet. Some even complain they start feeling better when they leave their homes for a while, only to feel worse when they return. Chemical seepage into sealed houses because it's still cold as balls in East Palestine. Let's look at the weather real quick. So, in East Palestine, Ohio, it is currently, mind you, it's 8 o'clock at night and the sun's been down for a while, 47 degrees, which means that a lot of these people still have their heat on. Which means whatever floated through the air and got caught in the HVAC filter is now probably still circulating in the house, and nobody's opening windows because either it's raining out or it's cold and we're not heating the outside. That's what my mom always used to say. Are curious as to why they're still getting chemical bronchitis when they go into their homes, but feel better once they're out in the fresh air. It's a mystery. This could be a lot of things, but if you're leaving your house and symptoms improve, then you go back and it comes back. I'm not thinking that's allergies or not thinking it's a cold, says Deb Weiss with QuickMed. I think it's related to that stuff that you're inhaling there. Yeah, I would say that's probably a pretty safe bet. Alright, and the last one. What Dr. Mark Siegel is seeing on the ground in East Palestine. Authored by Dr. Mark Siegel. Co-authored by Mary Carol Butterfield. When I arrived in East Palestine, I didn't know what to expect. Were people still getting sick, or was most of this anxiety, as one ER physician told me he was seeing at nearby Salem Regional Medical Center? The government, in the form of the state and the EPA, was asserting that all was well. The water and the air and the people's homes were clean and safe, and happy and clean. But driving into East Palestine at 0500 this Monday morning told a different story. There was a charred smell in the air from miles away, and I wasn't the only one who smelt it. Well, in this case, I would say that he who smelt it probably didn't deal it. And some of the people we met were sick. We set up a camera outside the First Church of Christ, which the state was using as a medical clinic, The first people we spoke to, the Murphys, talked about difficulty getting in to see a doctor as well as primary care docs, who tested one person for exposure but blanket treated others for sinus infection. My concern over the impact of pre-existing conditions grew as one woman with severe emphysema told me that every time she came to town she had trouble breathing. Another, Eric, who made his living making gravestones, had developed pulmonary fibrosis from exposure to silicon in his work, had gotten worse since the train derailment, and his x-ray reflected it. One woman was having nosebleeds, broke into tears as she described her 10-year-old daughter having the same. The CDC has arrived, and Captain Jill Schugert, with vast experience from Katrina to Ebola, was the senior environmental health expert taking the lead. She was clear that the problem had yet to be fully defined, and CDC was trying to help. But I could tell that she was concerned as she talked about the need to track the health impact on first responders, as we failed to do so adequately after the terrorist attacks on September 11th. Perhaps the most impressive was the group we met who was bringing pallets of water all the way from Texas on big trucks. I asked him how much they were bringing, and Matt, the leader, replied, as much as is needed, which is good. So we're seeing some bad stuff, we're seeing some good stuff. Mostly good, I hope, and I do hope that most people get better at this point, but definitely a contrast to see. All right, let's do government officials behaving badly. Let's see, what do we have? All the way down to the Forbes article. I don't think we're going to get through everything today. But let's do government officials behaving badly, starting with one Michael Pence. Pence, the warmonger, says if the U.S. wavers in supporting Ukraine, America may need to fight. And then as soon as he said that, he got a massive heart-on over the fact of sending more poor kids to go die in a war, from Alex Ditzberg. The U.S. has approved billions in assistance for Ukraine as the embattled nation has endeavored to beat back a Russian invasion over the last year, but former Vice President Mike Pence, who has indicated that he is considering a White House bid, God no, is warning that if America wavers in its commitment to support Ukrainians in defending their freedom, U.S. troops may have to fight to defend America's freedom. Okay, we got to get the map again. So, according to the Blaze and what they had to say, if Mike Pence is correct, that means that if we don't pledge billions upon billions of dollars in federal aid to the Ukraine, that means American people may have to fight for the freedom of the people that live over here by fighting over here. This is like Bush foreign policy 101 right here. And by the way, it put us here for 20 years. How about we don't? And we also don't send them trillions upon trillions of dollars. Let's keep reading. Pence said the quickest path to help peace is to help Ukraine win the war. He says he thinks that if Russia is not stopped in Ukraine, NATO allies will eventually be threatened. Boy, would that ever be a stupid ass move. And this is, again, this is like the War Pig 101. Like, if you close your eyes and listen to him talk, you can almost hear W. We'll listen to him for a little bit. And the U.S. will have no choice besides sending its own troops. Hey, 2002 called, they want their foreign policy back. Pence advocated sanctions against Russia as well as military and humanitarian support to assist Ukraine. Let's listen.
Hi there, everybody, and thanks for being with us on KXAN Live. I'm Will Dupree in the KXAN Live studio.
Staff, led by Elizabeth Dowdy, has
expressed his support and solidarity. Thank you all for attending. Ukraine persevered through the unprecedented invasion that Europe hasn't seen since the end of World War II, was able to liberate over for joining us today. We're grateful that you chose to remember this day with us here at the University of Texas, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Misha. Thank you for your moving words and the courageous example of your family and your people. Hearing your resolve and your determination today on this dark anniversary, I am more convinced than ever that the day will come when peace is restored to a free and independent Ukraine. God bless you. And I thank you all for being here. I thank the hospitality of the Clements Center for National Security here at the University of Texas. It's good to be with you all. The Clements Center is one of America's premier institutions, raising up the next generation of our national security leaders. And we're grateful for your leadership, to Dean and the whole team that are here. I especially want to thank Lieutenant Colonel Paul Edgar for his hospitality, and Dr. William Inbud, who is in Washington, D.C. today, celebrating the anniversary of an extraordinary American accomplishment with former President George W. Bush in PEPFAR. But we thank him for his hospitality as well. We are here today to mark the one-year anniversary of Russia's unprovoked and unconscionable invasion of Ukraine. 1 year ago today, Russian forces launched an unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine. And over the past year, the world has witnessed a tragedy of enormous proportions unfolding in real time. Over the past 365 days, more than 300,000 have been killed or wounded in this conflict. Millions more have fled their homes and their country. And as my wife and I witnessed firsthand, tens of thousands of women and children of every age surged across the border with all that they could carry of their worldly possessions to escape the ravages of war. It's human suffering on a scale not seen in Europe since World War II. In the face of Russian aggression,
Okay, can't do that anymore. But again, it's a situation where you sit here, you close your eyes, maybe imagine a little bit of an accent, but otherwise it's Bush all over again. And mark my words, number one, mark my words, if you go down this path again at GOP, number one, I won't vote for you ever again. But I also strongly believe that probably about a third of your caucus will not either. So think long and hard before you start putting Bushes and Romneys back in office. Let's keep going. Pence breaks with DeSantis over Ukraine position. Putin will not stop at Ukraine. Well, that would be a suicide mission for him. Because after Ukraine is Poland, which is a NATO ally. I don't want to go to war with Russia, but going after a NATO ally would probably be what does it. From Brett Samuels. Former Vice President Pence on Friday warned that it could be wrong to think that Russian President Vladimir Putin would stop at trying to take control of Ukraine. A direct break with comments made by Ron DeSantis. Pence delivered an address at the University of Texas at Austin, in which he argued for the importance of U.S. support for Ukraine on the first anniversary of the war, cautioning that Russian victory in Ukraine could draw the U.S. into a broader conflict that threatened the sovereignty of NATO allies. In an interview with NBC News after the speech, Pence was asked about DeSantis' views. Earlier in the week, the Florida governor expressed opposition to the open-ended support for Ukraine while casting doubt on the prospect that Russia would seek to invade other countries. The fear of Russia going into NATO countries and all that and steamrolling, that has not even come close to happening, DeSantis said on Fox News. I would say that anyone that thinks that Putin will stop at Ukraine is wrong, Pence told NBC News, referring to DeSantis' earlier remarks, which, by the way, was what warmonger Romney said in the debates in 2012, and our bat-eared friend came out and said, the 80s cult, and they want their foreign policy back. We need to understand the real long-term threat of renewed Russian aggression in Europe, he continued, and I hold the view that it will not stop there. Because of course you do. Because the first thing that you want to do as president is go send a bunch of other people's children to die in a war to enrich yourself through the defense contractors. Just like was warned about when you took the vice presidency in 2016. I love this last part. Make no mistake, this is not America's war. When has that ever stopped anybody before? Afghanistan wasn't America's war either. Neither was Iraq. Neither was the Yemeni civil war. In fact, generally, well, we've got the map up. Generally, anything that's happening in this general region of the world is not America's war. And yet, that's never stopped us from making it America's war. Funny how that works. Let's see, what else do we have? Mike Pence slams apologists for Putin and the GOP because, that's a soundbite from Kevin Brininger. Former Vice President Pence, a possible 2024 Republican presidential candidate, denounced his own party's apologists for Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday while delivering a full-throated call for the U.S. to ramp up its support for Ukraine. Yeah, that's a soundbite. Pence, who served in the White House for 4 years under former President Trump, did not call out any of his fellow Republicans by name, but he suggested that criticism targeted GOP leaders. While some in my party have taken a somewhat different view, let me be clear. There can be no room in the leadership of the Republican Party for apologists for Putin, Pence said. There can only be room for champions of freedom. They're going right back to what they were. And you know what? They deserve whatever comes to them. And the Americans that support these war pigs deserve whatever's coming to them, too. This is the thing. When I was young, 18, 19, 17 even, I protested against war. I thought that the war in Iraq was pointless. I wrote about the first protest that I saw objectively, but I was often with the protesters, protesting against the war in the Middle East in Iraq, until it fell out of the news, obviously, and different things came up. And I was against Republicans at the time because I was told, wrongly, that Republicans were the real warmongers. And as I grew older, I stayed anti-war. And then the Democrats, many of whom I stood shoulder to shoulder with protesting against the war with, turned pro-war. I looked at them and said, hey, what the hell happened to you? I've stood next to you at a protest against war. The propaganda is strong. And people like Pence are looking forward to going back and sending more kids off to die. Another top house Republican, another warmonger, war in Ukraine would be over if Biden gave them the weapons that they needed. This is Michael McCall of Texas, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, suggested during an interview Sunday that the Russia's war against Ukraine would be over if President Biden had given Ukrainians the weapons that they needed. McCall made the remark during an interview on ABC with ABC News host Martha Raddatz on This Week. I was at the Munich Security Conference, met with a lot of high-ranking military officials, including our Supreme Allied Commander. They're all in favor of us putting not only F-16s but longer-range artillery to take out the Iranian drones into Crimea, McCall said. In fact, the word I kept hearing was, we need to put everything that we have into there so that we can go replace it at a profiteering venture for people like you. I know the admin says as long as it takes. I think with the right weapons, it shouldn't take so long. And quite frankly, Martha, this whole thing is taking too long. And it really didn't have to happen this way. I mean, look at Afghanistan. We went into that all in as well, and that took 20 years. Hell, Iraq took 10. McCall said the Biden admin, slow walk and slow pace in delivering weapons in Ukraine was precisely what Putin wants. Alright, we gotta change up the music track a little bit. Oops. That's not what I want. Oh, hey, we do have to actually get out of here on time too, because the Porch Boys are coming. They're back in. They're gonna stream again. All right, so that'll change how we're doing things here, but we still have to change up the track. I think with enough pressure from Congress on both sides of the aisle, we can get into Ukraine. But they really need to win this fight, he added. Otherwise, what are we doing in Ukraine? McCall said the Republicans are leading the way with audits, showing where the weapons are going because the GOP wants to ensure that resources given to Ukraine are being used for their intended purposes. But you know what? I don't even care if they're being used for their intended purposes. I'd like to see more aid go to East Palestine, Ohio. Then what's going on over there? Let's listen.
There you see the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Michael McCall, who led his own delegation to Kyiv just one day after President Biden's visit this week. Congressman McCall joins us now. Good to see you. We've all been in Ukraine this week. You met with President Zelensky. You said in Ukraine while you were there that you're seeing increasing momentum towards getting long-range missiles and F-16. You heard what President Biden said. You heard what Jake Sullivan said. It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I was at the Munich Security Conference, met with a lot of the high-ranking military officials, including our Supreme Allied Commander, they're all in favor of us putting not only F-16s in, but longer-range artillery to take out the Iranian drones in Crimea. In fact, the word I kept hearing was, we need to put everything we have into there. I know the administration says as long as it takes. I think with the right weapons, it shouldn't take so long. And quite frankly, Martha, this whole thing is taking too long, and it really didn't have to happen this way.
But you heard Jake Sullivan say, look, our military is looking at the ground. What they need right now is tanks. What they need is infantry. Why do you think F-16s would make a difference?
Because it can travel the entire country with great
Because I have stock in Lockheed Martin.
speed. It can knock out targets. It can't protect the country.
Also could get shot down. There are a lot of air defenses, especially over on the border.
It could, and but the fact is, if we don't give them everything, if they don't get the momentum right now, with the Russian offensive coming into the country right now, they have a window of time with the counteroffensive. That's why it's important when I talk to these top military officers, give them everything they have that you can now, so they can win this thing. When we give them what they can really use and ask for, they win. When we slow walk and slow pace this thing, it drags it out, and that's precisely what Putin wants.
What could you do at this point, as chair? At this point, legislatively, is there really anything you could do?
Yeah, well, we can certainly write into our appropriations bills prioritizing weapon systems. We intend to do that. But in addition, Martha, this was a bipartisan delegation to Munich. My delegation in Ukraine all agreed with Zelensky that the ATACMS and the F-16s were appropriate right now. I talked to General Milley last night. I don't think it's off the table. I think with enough pressure from Congress on both sides of the aisle, we can get into Ukraine what they really need to win this fight.
All right, that's enough out of you. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, Congressman McCall, I'm going to be much, much more interested in what it is that you have to say if you go to the front lines first. And I'm dead serious, by the way. Head to that front line. Show us all how it's done. Go out there. You go right up onto that front line. You grab a rifle and you say, hey, I will lead the offensive into Russia. Then I will give a damn what you have to say. But you are not talking about that. You're talking about putting weapons into the hands of poor kids so that they can be used up and replenished for a profit that's going to go into your pocket. And also the White House lauding the aid that comes from Saudi Arabia from USA Today. We're glad to see it. White House lauds Saudi Arabian plan to send $400 million to Ukraine. From Michael Collins. The White House on Monday lauded Saudi Arabia pledge to send $400 million in humanitarian assistance to war-torn Ukraine, calling the commitment an important one a year after Russia launched its invasion. We're glad to see it, said John Kirby, spokesman for the National Security Council. The announcement of $400 million in energy, infrastructure, and financial assistance came Sunday, as Saudi Arabia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, led a delegation into Kiev for a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the presidential residence. The prince also met with Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba and Andrei Yermak, Zelensky's chief of staff, which is, by the way, probably going to make OPEC a little bit interesting because Saudi Arabia and Russia have a precarious alliance based on the oil dollar. They're not politically aligned, but they are aligned in the oil market, so that's going to make things a little bit interesting. I'm kind of want to get some popcorn and see what's happening there. We'll watch that and keep going. Janet Yellen visited Ukraine and underscores U.S. economic support. We're on the edge of the debt ceiling collapse, and Janet Yellen is in the Ukraine. Let me remind you of that one more time. We are on the edge of the debt ceiling collapse, and Janet Yellen is in the Ukraine. From Hannah Arirova. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said Monday that her first visit to Ukraine underscored Washington's commitment to continuing its economic support for the country, as the din of air raid sirens echoed across the Ukrainian capital for another goddamn photo op. To understand the sheer level of propaganda that's being pumped into this stupid-ass conflict, this is what frustrates me. No U.S. official can step out of a plane without hearing the air raid sirens strategically going off while they're standing there, with no air raid going on, mind you. But hey, let's go sound those sirens. It'll reinforce the idea that a relatively unaffected area of the Ukraine is under a war-torn situation. Yellen said following the talks with Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal that the U.S. has provided nearly $50 billion in security, economic, and humanitarian assistance, and announced another multi-billion-dollar package to boost the country's economy. Shmyhal offered thanks to the U.S. for its support and hailed Yellen as a friend of Ukraine. He said Ukraine's budget deficit now stands at $38 billion, and the U.S. will provide another $10 billion in assistance in September. Yeah, wonder where that money's coming from. Shmyhal and Yellen also discussed sanctions aimed at weakening Russia's economy, as well as the possibility of using Russian frozen assets to help in Ukraine's economic recovery. Janet Yellen is not an ambassador. Why the hell is she over there? We are running out of time because Porch Boys are starting in just a minute here. So we're not going to get through all of government officials behaving badly. We can get crap done today. I have so much left to do. Alright, from CNN exclusive, Yellen says, so far so good in U.S. inflation battle. Treasury Secretary Yellen said Monday she believes U.S. inflation remains too high, but that a soft landing is on the radar. During an exclusive interview with CNN's Melissa Bell from Kiev, Yellen said the Federal Reserve's efforts to date to bring down inflation while maintaining a strong labor market appear achievable. I would say so far so good, said Yellen, a former Fed chair who led the central bank from 14 to 18. Obviously there are risks, and the global situation we face is very uncertain, she said. There can be shocks from it, but look, inflation is still too high, but generally you look over the last year, inflation has been coming down. No, it isn't. It is doing the opposite of going down. It's still going up. 6.8% year over year. And I know the Fed is committed to continuing the process of bringing it down to more normal levels, and I believe that they will be successful with it. I don't. Not until your administration is fired, Janet Yellen. Alright. We are going to have to cut it right there, unfortunately. If Porch Boys weren't on, I would keep going. Honestly, I would. Because I snacked a little bit today, even though I wasn't supposed to. So I'm not like in dire running to the kitchen to go start making dinner right away. But I want to make sure that the Porch Boys get their time slot, that they work for it. So we're going to finish off at this point. Let's get the rules of acquisition up here and let's head out of here for the day. So we will be reading, of course, from Memory Beta. And the last thing we do on a Monday, or up until this week, the last thing that we always do on a Monday, is we will look in to see a rule of acquisition. This segment will be moving to Friday starting next week, by the way. And our live chat festival will be on Mondays instead. But we will look into this, and we will look at the rules of acquisition, a Ferengi religion that allows them to get into the divine treasury and bargain for a new life. We look at some of their rules, we look at how they are used in practice on a hyper-capitalistic society like the Ferengi, and how we can also use them in our lives to become better capitalists. We're getting down there. We're actually getting towards the end. Alright, so we did one that we definitely could not apply to our everyday lives, and the 144th rule of acquisition, especially with my dedication to charity. I was not a fan of this one, but this moves us into the 147th rule of acquisition. People love the bartender. This is beta canon because this is from a novel, not anything that appeared on the screen. Quark, of course, being a bartender, benefiting from this. I do kind of find it funny too. I've been watching Lower Decks again, and I'm just about finished with what's out there so far. I know season 4 is coming, but I'm just finishing up with season 3 right now, and they went to DS9 in season 3 for one episode, and Quark is out there after having put out a franchise of Quark's bars across the Alpha and Beta quadrants, by the way. They go to the original Quarks. But let's talk about the bartender for a second. People love the bartender. And sometimes you don't like the bartender and you don't go to the bar. I've been in that situation before. People love the bartender. When you are the bartender, you are in control. Who drinks, who doesn't drink. What they get. You're a sympathetic ear. You're a provider of both company and liquor. Of course people love the bartender. And it's a great place to be in. You know, when we go back up, I mean, the next rule that we look at is the 151st. Even when you're a customer, sell yourself. It all comes into this. And part of being the bartender is selling yourself. You don't always have to be the bartender, but the host, the retailer, the manager, the person that's coming in here. I've, working across the counter now again. And talking to customers directly, which I didn't do for the longest time while working. People come in and they come to talk to you. And you can drive all your customers away and make very poor business decisions, which I've seen a lot of doing. Or you can play with them, you can have some fun with them, and you can cut them deals every once in a while to make them think that even if you are making a decent profit off of them, if there's a way to cut from where you were making off of them versus what you can and still make a profit, you look like the hero off of there. Every opportunity is there to be the best person in the room when you are the bartender. And you know why that is? Because everybody loves the bartender. And if they don't love the bartender, your bar goes under. That's a good one. I like this one. We can definitely use this one in our real lives. And it doesn't even have to be a bartender. Again, it can be in any position where you are the one who is directly rendering the service. You can sit there with the manager, and the manager who doesn't talk to the customers, or your support staff, the warehouse guy, or the people who are, in my instance, the people who are turning the wrench. Those people are all essential to your business, but the person who faces the customer, even if that person is not the entrepreneur, that is your bread and butter. Everybody loves the bartender. And with that, we're out of here for the day. That was a good one. I got real ranty. I maybe even got a little bit preachy. I apologize for that, but we had a lot to go over. We didn't quite get to where we needed to go, but we definitely got a bunch of it. And so we will continue tomorrow. We'll be doing some government... Well, why are we doing this without outro music? Let's do that first. Outro music. All right, so shifting gears here and heading out of here today. Well, we've got a lot more to go over here tomorrow. Definitely, because we've still got half of government officials behaving badly. We've got some other stuff, especially even some good news doing a U-turn. And I want to make sure that we get to that at least at some point this week. It might wait till things that I like, which is definitely a possibility. So we may be talking about that. But a lot to go over here today, tomorrow. More stuff, more Ukraine. Probably talking more about the student loan debt crisis. Probably talking more about the derailment. I'm sure that a lot of that's still going to come up. Plus, Roald Dahl stuff, federal employees saying the remote work is better for the planet. Of course it is. And a pizza shop. That, I think, if we're going to say for things that I like. A pizza shop displaying a blunt message saying, in the search for reliable employment. I like that article. We'll talk about that. But come back here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary as we look at what is happening in the next 22 hours. You're not going to want to miss it. We're officially in or in presidential primary season, so we may even get some news from the Donald. Definitely. Come back here. We will see you then. Bring a few friends, get some more names in the live chat, and take care of yourselves. Have a good night. Be safe, be good, and we will see you in the live chat over on the Porch Boys. Take care. Have a good night. And until next time, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.